Hello and welcome again to the Energy That Heals Summit. Isn't it exciting to realize the potential of energy to shift matter, to shift our bodies, to shift our reality field? It is just astonishing when you look at the research showing that it all begins. It all begins with energy. And whatever ails you, whatever you're struggling with in your life, look at the energetic component of that and how you can change the energy around that. I know that, like, last night I talked to my wife and I realized that, my energy wasn't perfect, wasn't all that great in that energy exchange. And I said to my wife, Christine, I said, darling, can we have a redo? I want to just shift the energy around that statement I made to you a little bit and really bring out my fullest and best potential. We have the possibility to do that in our money, in our relationships, in our health. And so you are choosing now to discover the difference energy can make in your life, in your well-being, in your mood, in all these dimensions that will support you in having the best life possible. My name is Dawson Church. I'm the author of 3 best-selling science books, and I can't wait to share with you how you can use energy to heal in this coming episode. My guest today is a dear friend. Her name is Eileen McKusick. She's a researcher, writer, inventor, educator, and speaker in the field of therapeutic sound, but also the human biofield. She has an MA in integrative education and has been studying the effects of sound on the human body since 1996. She is the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute. She's also author of the best-selling books, Tuning the Human Biofield and Electric Body, Electric Health. I am so excited, Eileen, to be connecting and sharing with you today.
Yes, Dawson, I feel the same way. It's great to see you. It's been a while, and I love talking to you about this sort of thing.
It's always good. And so, when did you first get some clue in your life that there was something to vibration, that there was something more than this material skin bag and flesh and the obvious reality around us that might just be having an effect on us?
I think it started when I read Deepak Chopra's book. Gosh, I can't even remember what it's called, but it was about vibration. It was about energy healing. And they introduced the idea to me that everything is vibration, that solidity is an artifact of our senses, and that really everything is packets of light, of vibrating information. And that's when shortly afterwards I came across the idea of vibrational medicine and using color and sound and light for healing. And it just made a lot of sense with me. It resonated. And I jumped right in and bought a set of tuning forks for healing back in 1996. And I've been playing with tuning forks ever since.
And how do you typically use them in a healing session?
Well, we use them in a couple different ways. We have a couple different kinds of forks. We have weighted forks that have little barrels on the end, and when you place those on the body, it sends vibration into the body. We also have unweighted forks, that kind that you would use to tune an instrument. And I actually started using these almost like sonar, where I would bounce sound off of people and listen to the ping back. And sort of much to my surprise, my brain sort of turned into an ultrasound machine, and I could see and hear and sense what was going on in the body and also the mind of people, because everybody gives off vibes and we all sense and read people's vibes. And this curious thing with tuning forks kind of allowed me to make those vibes audible within the overtones and undertones of the tuning fork. And I discovered that there's a whole language of vibration. Every emotion produces a waveform that sounds a particular way. Every pathology produces a sound. For example, if I bounce sound off of somebody's liver and they have a healthy liver, the pingback sounds a particular way. But if they have something like a fatty liver, the pingback is going to sound really different. So it's a kind of an invisible ink decoder that makes visible and audible the subtle vibrations that are going on in the body.
And so you literally can hear these things acoustically when you are using the tuning forks?
Yeah, and even the person who I'm working with can hear it. You can hear how the tone changes in particular areas. It's not super subtle. It can actually be very dramatic in some cases. Just for example, I was in a motorcycle accident a couple summers ago and I fractured the outside of my left ankle. And everyone who came over, I made them listen to the tuning fork when I raised it up over where the brake was versus over my other ankle. And you could really hear it. It had kind of like a kind of quality to it, whereas the one that wasn't broken was very smooth, and it's very, very evident.
Hmm. And then how did you first start to tie this to the human biofield?
Well, when I first started using the tuning forks, there was a lot going on that I didn't understand. And certainly in the beginning, years ago in Connecticut in the 90s, when I told people I was doing sound healing with tuning forks, people were very dismissive of me. And because I didn't really know or understand the how or the why, I wasn't very confident in my delivery in discussing it with people. But the people who were willing to be my guinea pigs early on definitely reported benefit. And that's why I kept going with it. Because even when I didn't know what I was doing and didn't have any expectations, people were reporting that they had less pain, they had less anxiety, that they were sleeping better. And so it was extremely intriguing. And so I kept going. And back in 2009, I discovered that there was a fourth state of matter called plasma, which I think a lot of people know about now, but back then, like nobody had ever heard of plasma. We're all living in a world of solid, liquid, and gas. And I didn't know that the body had an electrical system. And when I started reading books like The Body Electric, and it started to dawn on me, like, wow, there's this whole system, this whole plasma electrical system in our body that beats our heart, that has us think, that's really sort of driving. It's our light, right? When you're alive, your light is on. When you die, your light goes out. And so that speaks to electrical current running through the body. And we know from basic science that anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And so when I started to understand that I was dealing with a toroidal shaped electrical magnetic aspect of our being that we never learn about, right? So when that all started to come into focus and I understood that the sound was working with the body's electrical system, everything suddenly started to make sense.
Give us an example, like a case history of somebody who healed when you used this with them that hadn't been healing using conventional or other methods.
Well, the body heals itself, right? I mean, our bodies are designed to keep themselves in stasis. But when we go through life and we have accidents and injuries and traumas, what we do is we start to amass areas of subconscious and conscious tension. And it's these patterns of tension in our body, the sort of retractions from difficult things, that stop the flow of current, of blood, of lymph, and inhibit the body's ability to sort itself out. So ultimately, what we're doing with this practice is finding these areas of tension and distortion. The tuning fork, I comb the tuning fork through the field and I find where it sounds wonky and I just stay there. And so the tuning fork is acting like a mirror. It's providing the body with a reflection of its vibrational activity and output. And the body, just like you and I, if we haven't looked in a mirror in a while and we end up seeing one and our hair is a mess and we have a poppy seed in our teeth, we use that reflection to bring ourselves into order. And the body does the same thing with the tuning forks. That reflection, it hears itself as out of tune and out of balance, and it will use the steady rhythm and the steady tone that is produced by the tuning fork to tune itself, right? So I don't really heal anyone, but I do help people to heal themselves by releasing the tension that is causing whatever kind of problem in the body. So this works really well on things that are rhythmic. For example, anxiety. I've worked with many people who've had a lot of anxiety, a lot of energy trapped and jumping around inside their body. And just by providing this mirror, this metronome, the body will settle itself down. In fact, I've done some studies with our friend and colleague Shamini Jan that we've had published in peer review that people who have received 3 biofield tuning sessions over Zoom, actually, all of their markers of anxiety went way down. So many, many, many people who have anxiety have been helped. Physical pain is the same way. I've had some very dramatic experiences with people in pain because often it's just a lot of tension. And so if you can help the body to settle that down. I worked with a gentleman years ago, and he had been in many, many death-defying accidents. He rolled down a hill in a front-end loader, and I just found, as I worked with him over the weeks, I found one kind of crazy thing after another. He didn't sleep, he had anxiety, he had all these aches and pains, and we very methodically sort of pulled all of his dents.
Dings and dents left by life.
Yeah, dings and dents spent by life, and we can really actually back those out of the electrical signal and create more coherence and flow. So physical, emotional, mental issues. I think the biggest thing that I would say, Dawson, is that I help people to get unstuck. Right? Because I think that's the biggest thing that people suffer from is that they get in a place in their life and they can't get out of their own way because in our electrical system, pathways that get laid down early become the wiring internally that we just continue to flow along. And we increase the strength and the intensity of those through repeated experiences. And then we might want to change in some way, but 95% of our subconscious is just flowing along that wiring. So one of the things that I call myself is a bioelectrician, that I actually come in with my tuning forks and help to rewire the body into a more central, balanced experience of now. And when people have their wiring straightened out and they're more in the present moment, it's a lot easier for them to flow forward in their life, maybe in a different direction.
And what happened with Mr. rolling the front end loader end over end and all those dings and dents? How long did it take, and what was his final result?
Yeah, well, it took a while because, it always has to do with the intensity and the duration, right? So the longer someone's been under stress or the greater the input of stress. And certainly he had one big thing after another. I think it took us a few months. I mean, it wasn't like a 1 and done or a 3 and done. He was very steadfast in his commitment to healing. And he got to the place where he could sleep, where he wasn't in pain. He finally got to a place where we were like, wow, you're good. Okay. And then I actually moved from that area. So I haven't seen him since, but he was amazed. He was kind of a regular Vermont kind of guy and didn't necessarily expect that, getting tuning fork healing was going to help set him straight, but it really did.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too that just as we become resonant with health in a case like that, when we have a lot of those dings and dents left by life, we're often resonant with other fields, and it actually disturbs our well-being. I'm thinking, for example, of say certain news stories might really disturb us, and so when we hear them, our resonant frequency of that is in harmony, in sync with anxiety or depression or stress might really be engaged. And you watch people sometimes. I watched people sometimes when they hear a certain name, when they hear about a certain situation, and it's engaging the resonant frequency within them, and that raises their stress level dramatically. So we're resonating with something. We may as well choose to make it health rather than all of those stressors.
Yeah, it isn't always easy though to control those kinds of things, right? Triggers can come up, and those really show us where we have charge. And you literally do have charge in particular patterns in your electrical system. And what's nice about this work is it can really help us to discharge those areas so that we don't get so lit up, so that we're not so emotionally manipulated and kind of all over the place. Because when we're in a stress response, that's not a place of health. And whether we are reacting or not reacting isn't going to change the situation out there in the world, but it is going to impact us. And so for me, a big part of this work is building in this resiliency where you can kind of roll with the difficulties of life and not get hung up or bent or triggered and have to spend large amounts of emotional energy feeding whatever your drama is. Because at the end of the day, that's an investment that goes nowhere.
Absolutely. And in fact, reinforces itself because the more you respond to those inputs, the more momentum they have, the more energy they have inside of your energy system. And so you watch people, for example, with PTSD, we find that people get triggered, that then actually building those neural circuits are being triggered. And those neural circuits get bigger and larger and better at signaling over time. So they wind up more triggered after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And in fact, with some large disasters, half the people diagnosed with PTSD after 5 years actually didn't have PTSD a year afterwards. It only showed up 3, 4, 5 years later because they're resonating with that. That's part of the experience for a prolonged time. Building up that neuropsychology, neurobiology eventually results in symptoms. So it's so important to do what you're advocating here and take control of your frequencies.
Yeah, and it's something that can be really hard to do from the inside out. And I also think that we've been really conditioned into this world of the self-sufficient individual, where we think that we need to do things on our own, and we try to fix ourselves. But I've found that in order to heal myself of my PTSD and the challenges that I faced earlier in my life, that I've actually needed a lot of help from other people, and lots of different kinds of modalities. Certainly biofield tuning, but I feel like it's important to combine it with fascia release and craniosacral, like on-body work, I think is an important complement to energy work. In my practice, if I've seen someone a handful of times and we've done biofield tuning, then I'm going to send them to go get some body work as well to integrate that, because it really is in our tissues and in our postures and in our habits of where we hold tension. So I've really come to the conclusion, Dawson, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, that most of the ailments that we suffer from are tension-based. And I know I have a lot of colleagues who say that it's really toxins that do us in. But in my experience, people who are relaxed, their body metabolizes toxins a lot better. For example, I found with people who have a tendency towards heavy metal toxicity. Well, we're all exposed to heavy metals in the air and the water and what we eat. And I got a mouthful of amalgam fillings. They never bothered me. That there's a certain personality type that gets that kind of toxicity. And that is people who hold back their anger. And when you think about getting angry and then holding it in, right? Just feel that feeling of holding in anger. You're creating tension across all the membranes in your body. And how on earth is your body going to move heavy metals around if everything inside is tense, right? So the toxicity isn't really the problem, it's the tension that's the problem. And so this is why we really focus on helping people to relax. And it's maybe not quite that simple, but that is a really big part of health.
That's a great way to think of this for all of us as a practical matter. Are we running the part of our life that concerns us in tension or in relaxation? So that part of you that feels stressed, let's take a moment and think about this. So as Eileen's sharing this amazing insight, this powerful insight, are you holding tension in that part of your body you're struggling with? It might be your health, it might be money, it might be relationships. Is there tension there? Are there rigid old patterns there that you haven't been able to shift? And can you use energy? And can you use the power of these fields to shift them. Go ahead and just give us a quick primer too, Eileen, on what our most modern thinking on the biofield actually is.
Well, I'll share what I've observed because I'm a little rogue regarding the larger definition of the biofield. It's my understanding that the term was coined by National Institute for Health Scientists in 1994 to give a scientific term to the field of energy and information that may or may not surround the human body. And what I've found in practical applications, so I've been a practitioner for 28 years. I've worked with thousands and thousands of clients. I've trained thousands of students. I've had a lot of field time. And what I've observed is that you cannot separate the magnetic field around the body from the electrical system that's in the body. So I would say that the beating of the heart and the activity of the brain and all the electrical information and activity that's going on in the body is just as much a part of the biofield as the magnetic field that surrounds it. So I would say that the biofield is the body's electrical system in its entirety, including the electricity that's beating the heart, as well as the field that surrounds us. And I would just distill it to say it's our electrical system. And it's that simple because a lot of people are like, oh, does the biofield exist or doesn't exist? I'm like, well, okay, is your heart beating electrically? And people will be like, yeah. And like, your brain is electric? Yeah. And you're like, your bones, your blood, that's all electric, right? Well, we know anything with electric current has a magnetic field. Our human body is no different. That is the energy in energy medicine. It's very simple.
And we use modern instruments like EEGs to measure the electrical energy of the brain. MRIs go into a giant electromagnet, and we can use that advanced instrument to get a precise picture of what's going on inside the body. So we use these therapies in medicine all the time, and it's really interesting to look at some of the points of view of the skeptics, and they say things like, "Oh, the human body has no energy field," and it's like, well, then how does an MRI work? I mean, that was literally what somebody wrote in response to one of my peer-reviewed papers. They said there's no evidence for the human body having its own field. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, all those MRIs.
Yeah. Well, there's a device called a squid magnetometer that was
Yes.
invented in the 50s that was able to measure the magnetic field up to 12 feet away from the body. So there's lots of evidence. It's just that the chemical, mechanical, medical system doesn't want you to know about it.
Yeah, and we're so used to thinking in terms of that outside intervention, a pill, an outside agent, manipulation, surgery, and we're so unused to thinking about energy as our very first way of addressing our illnesses and problems that it takes quite a bit of a shift in focus to realize that, you may need the pill, you may need the surgery. I don't know what you did about your ankle, but you probably didn't rely only on energy. You probably went to the doctor as well for that one. So we have all these different ways of healing. And when you really recruit them all for your well-being, you're getting a whole package of different approaches and supporting your body in the most powerful way possible.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the multimodal approach to healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Give us a couple more examples of people who shifted their energy, and when that electromagnetic shift happened, something dramatic happened in the physical body.
I think one of the big things that I see is that we've become very contracted, and that many people, especially people who are bright, who are smart, even who are tall, like you, Dawson, that there's a tendency that people develop to make themselves small and to kind of fold themselves in so that they're not offensive or that other people don't get jealous. And so many of us have had this experience of sort of dimming our light or contracting ourselves. So a big part of this process of relaxing is also there's an expansion that comes with it. And people start to expand out into their literal electric potential. Because I think many people, especially people who are on the healing path, know that they have greatness within them. They know that the gifts that they've been given, the song of their own soul, they recognize their own greatness. And I think a lot of people want to expand out into their potential, but bump up against these patterns of tension. So, what I've seen with a lot of people as we liberate them to expand into their gifts is I see a bringing forth of gifts. People who've been, wanting to write suddenly are able to. People who've been wanting to heal relationships suddenly are able to. The heart softens, the field opens. People who want to be better at a sport, for example, by releasing the tension, the anxiety, they expand into their potential as an athlete. Right. So this is something that I really see all the time is this opening up to the greatness that you are. And really, Dawson, and I know you know this too, that everyone really is great and everyone is brilliant and everyone is gifted. And we just have stories and beliefs and dents and other people's negativity. All this stuff kind of presses in on us and makes us small. And so to be able to liberate people's potential into where their soul is guiding them to go is a hugely satisfying thing to do.
How did that happen for you, Eileen?
Oh gosh. Well, I was doing this work. Like I said, I started in 1996 and I did it for 14 years before I ever had anyone do it to me. So in 2010, I started training my first group of students. And Dawson, I've been in the sort of human potential field, health and healing, since I was 18. I started reading Tony Robbins' books. I've read so many books. I've read some of your books. I had done all of those. Remember Nightingale Conant? You get like the
Yes.
cassettes, the CD sets. I had so many of those, and I had worked so hard to overcome my limitations. Okay, but in 2010, despite spending thousands of dollars and many, many hundreds of hours educating myself about human potential and healing, I was broke. I was $100,000 in debt. I was in chronic mid-back pain. I had 7 plantar's warts on my left foot. I was always fighting with my husband. I was stuck in drama and struggle. And as soon as I discovered plasma, the fourth state of matter, and realized that the light I had been seeking was not just spiritual, but was also biological. So the ability to reconcile the sort of spiritual all is one with this sort of scientific everything is separate through the awareness, the waking up to our electrical body, which I would say is the same thing as our soul. So to me, the biofield merges these places and like, oh, my inner light is divine and it's biological too. So that was pretty huge just philosophically for me. But as I started to receive tune-ups from my students over the years, I've been able to heal all of those things, every single one. And I realized that in the world of solid, liquid, and gas, and entropy and gravity and like everything falling apart, that there's also syntropy and that there's plasma and there's ether. So there's 2 more states of matter. And then there's 2 more forces of nature, syntropy, that which brings everything together, that's creative, and levity, right? Because sound waves fall upward. And so when I got these 2 additional states of matter and I got these 2 additional forces of nature and I got a whole bunch of tune-ups, all of those limitations, the stories about money, the stories about my health, the victimhood. Oh my God, I was steeped in victimhood because it's such a cultural thing, right? I think that we've been really conditioned to be stuck in the problem, stuck in depression, stuck in drama, stuck in struggle. And so for me, receiving this work and really the light dawning about the electrical system changed everything. It set me free. It really set me free in every way. And to me, freedom is health and health is freedom. So the more free you feel emotionally, financially, pain-free, all those things, the healthier you become, And now I'm 55 and I don't have any debt. I don't have any aches or pains. I don't have any plantar's warts. I've sorted myself out through energy work, not through doctors.
So ask yourself, as Eileen is sharing these areas of life where we can be stuck in our old story, our old account of ourselves, our old self-concept, think about where you're stuck. Just reflect for a moment on where you're contracted. And we're not having you think about this. Eileen and I aren't saying think about this and get depressed and upset about it. We're saying be mindful of it. And then that's the area of your life that you need to bring love, vibration, healing, your soul. As she began by saying at the very beginning, your full potential may long to flow through that part of you. And so as you bring it mindfully to your awareness, you can then hold it in this neutral space, this loving space, this kind space, this compassionate space, and then start to see it shift, bring it into the light of your own being, light of your own radiance, and invite it to start to relax. So just do that little exercise now mentally for a few moments, just maybe a journal about this now or later, but how you can find those areas of tension in your own life. And then where are you stuck in story? Where are you stuck in the old you, the old way of being? And where can you then start to find the leverage point to shift that? It's often energy. Eileen was just saying she didn't go and get a lot of outside intervention. She did it by shifting internally, shifting energy. Eileen, what other tips do you have for people who are just maybe getting started on this whole concept of the potential of shifting our energy, shifting our mind, shifting our being, and seeing change happen in our lives?
Well, one thing that I've observed, Dawson, that I think is really important for people to understand is that we grow and heal through a process of expansion and contraction. And so sometimes people, when they start to heal and they start to feel better and they're like, oh, they're good. And then all of a sudden they encounter some stressor or some bad character and they go back into their if you will. And then there tends to be a tendency to beat themselves up for being exhausted, being emotional, going backwards, this sort of thing. So there's guilt and judgment about not being in this state of like perpetual expansion and just getting better and better and better. That's just not how it works, because we might have some kind of experience that expands us, that lifts us, that really lights us up inside. But in order to really build the circuitry to stay there, right? Because if we've had all our wiring invested in our pain body, it takes time to rewire it back into our light body, back into our coherent self. And we have to build the scaffolding to be able to hold and maintain that level of expansion. And the way that our bodies and our spirits and our minds do that is much the same way. There's a particular flower. Someone sent me a video of dahlias opening and how they open and then they contract and then they open more and then they contract. And so that's what healing looks like. And so there are switchbacks and there are 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it can be frustrating and you can be like, why haven't I healed this yet? But it's so important to understand that we popped out into the time-space continuum in a pretty messy place. I often ask people in my classes, like, whose parents modeled proper emotional management?
I bet very few hands are raised.
No, none. I've never seen anyone raise their hand. And yet somehow in our generation, we have this expectation that we're supposed to have it all together. Right? Even though we don't have any modeling for that. We might have grown up seeing our parents fighting and, terrible things going on. The world is kind of a mess. The human family is sort of a mess. We're downstream of a lot of trauma. It's a messy place. And we're not just cleaning up our own messes. We're cleaning up the messes of those who came before us. Cleaning up the cultural mess. It's a hard word to be healthy in at the moment. And it is a kind of like, you kind of got to roll up your sleeves and go into it for the long haul and make health a lifestyle. Because if you don't make health a lifestyle, if you don't make getting healing, getting free, realizing your potential, there's a lot of forces in play that are going to take you down. And so it's important to make it a priority, but to realize that it's not easy. It takes time, but there are a lot of great resources available to us that our parents didn't have. Your work with tapping. I mean, there's a lot of amazing things to help to set you free right now. So, make use of them and realize that it's going to involve this. And when you're in a switchback or a contraction, know that it will pass. and that you will go back into that expanded state. Don't heap guilt and judgment and shame and stories on top of it. Let yourself be in that contracted place and then enjoy the expansion when it comes again.
Eileen, I'm just laughing internally because I've been a meditator since I was a teenager, and I know that sometimes I have a string of wonderful meditations day after day. I'm just so deep, I'm so present, I'm so engaged, and then I feel as though I'm just this brilliant meditator. And then it changes, and for a period of time, I feel as though I have a hard time getting there. My mind is so busy, my thoughts are so distracted, I can't get to that place. And so I began to actually mark in my daily journal which day was which. And I discovered a really interesting pattern, which was a 2-week cycle of moving toward better and better meditations, peaking, and then dropping off again. Then after 2 weeks, I'd reverse the cycle, move up again. It was like a sine wave, very perfect 2-week sine wave, going up and going down. And so much of our healing, so much of our growth, so much of our expansion is like that. So I really want everyone watching, listening right now to think about that cycle that Eileen describes. We have cycles of expansion and contraction, like that dahlia flower she mentioned. We have cycles where it's easy, it's effortless, we're moving to new places. And then there are times when we feel stuck, it's hard. That's just part of nature's natural process. So you want to love yourself and not beat yourself up when you're in one of those periods of contraction.
Yeah, I mean, you want to love yourself and not beat yourself up all the time.
That's excellent advice because, of course, that changes your energy. So, in our last couple of minutes, Eileen, any other simple practices people can use to get started? I know on your website, which we'll give people in a moment, you can pick up those tuning forks, either the one with the little knob on the end. What did you call it? The
weighted forks that have little
weighted
barrels.
fork, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the unweighted ones. Plus, there are other guides there. So, give us a few more ways of both entering this awareness of ourselves as electric beings, and also of some of the tools and practices we can use to actually shift that part of our energy field and see the results in our material bodies and minds.
Hmm. Well, at the end of the day, when we relax, we breathe more freely. And part of this idea of electric health and plasma is that we're actually living in a plasma. And we're like the fish doesn't know the water. We don't realize that we're swimming in this electromagnetic environment and that we're breathing in charge. It's like why we'd like to go forest bathing or be at the ocean. When we talk about an ionized atmosphere that is giving us more electric charge, because we can go for weeks without food, days without liquids, right? But you can only go a few minutes without air. So that is where the majority of the life force that's feeding your electrical system is actually coming from the air you breathe. And so the more that you can breathe fully, freely, gently, expansively, the more regulated your system is going to be, because really all of your emotions have a particular breathing pattern with them. So something really simple that you can do is just start noticing when you're holding your breath. And then just invite a bigger breath, right? So notice when you're going tense and noticing when you're going into contraction, and invite yourself to do the opposite, to expand, or where you notice where your breath catches, to expand energetically your breath past that catch point, right? So just very simply, the more you can breathe freely, fully, gratefully, that's going to help your overall electrical system, your lumens, your voltage. But if you're interested in sound healing tools, you were talking about how some meditation days, it's hard to get into that zone. I recently created a new frequency fork that's 222 hertz. And when one of my friends got it, he said that it was a cheat code. And I was like, what do you mean by a cheat code? And he's like, oh, this just brings me into that meditation place right away. Like it just brings me into presence, because when you focus on one pointed attention on a particular sound, and this is why sound is used in monasteries, sound has always been used in healing in holy places, because it brings you into that relaxed, aware presence, where we want to be, where we're quiet inside, where it's easy for our mind to meld with the light, right? And go into that just place of connectivity. And so that particular frequency is kind of like a bell, and it's very pretty, and it's just very presencing. So if anybody wants a meditation aid, that 222 hertz fork can be very helpful for that. I feel like I should send you one, Dawson, for those 2 weeks when you're down there.
I'll be seeing you soon at the conference, so yeah.
That's right. I'll bring one.
That's where I've got my others from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of other tuning forks as well. I also have recordings. I've done recordings of tuning fork healing. So you can be like, what? How does that even work? But we all get moved by music, right? Recordings of songs can move us, and a tuning fork is an instrument. Sound moves us. So I've got a whole handful of free recordings on my website at biofieldtuning.com. And I have 22 on YouTube. I did a series called Sonic Sundays. There are conversations about the sort of biofield tuning electric health philosophy, as well as free tuning. So I have lots of free resources for people to experience the work, and then very high quality sound healing tools on my website, biofieldtuning.com.
So go to biofieldtuning.com for more information about Eileen's books, about her work, about her products, about those YouTube videos and links, and all of these resources that we're so happy to share with you, because we want you to use energy for healing. And we know that as you do that, as you shift your energy, that it changes everything around you. Everything else downstream from energy shifts automatically. Eileen, thank you so much for not only your wisdom and your insight and your enthusiasm, but your wonderful energy. I know from meeting you in person several times and connecting with you that you are one of those beacons of light, and I am so grateful to have you in my life.
Thank you so much, Dawson. I can't wait to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And again, you made the choice to support yourself, to support your well-being by showing up. Show up for yourself every single day and find the energy that heals, and that you can apply to your own situation, and notice the transformation that starts to flow out when you put energy at the center of your healing focus. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.